All right, well, keep putting those in the chat. We'll keep an eye on it. Thank you all for being here. But we're going to go ahead and get started. So, hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us and welcome to today's webinar, Living Authentically Me, Coming Out LGBTQ+. My name is Jackie Zimmerman, and I'm the Manager of Public Education Partnerships and e-learning at MHA's National Office, and I'll be moderating today's webinar. Just a few notes for you all before we begin. This webinar is being recorded and will be emailed out to all registrants within 1 week. We currently do not offer CEUs, but if you would like to request a certificate of attendance, you can do so by filling out a form we have. I'll post the link to that in the chat here shortly, and that will also be included in your follow-up email. We want to make note that today, October 11th, is National Coming Out Day. And for those who identify as LGBTQ+, coming out is a courageous step towards showing up to the world as your true and authentic selves. Coming out can be scary, and especially we know for individuals who safety, psychological, physical, or emotional is at risk if they do come out. So we know that it's a complex topic, but today we're really here just to share enjoy and celebration of our LGBTQ+ community and talk about how coming out and living your authentic self can have an impact on your mental health. And so I'm joined today by 4 incredible individuals to help me do that. We want to make note that this webinar is hosted by MHA in partnership with Janssen Neuroscience and Depression Looks Like Me. We want to thank our partners at Janssen and Depression Looks Like Me for all of their help in bringing this great event to you. I'll post the link to Depression Looks Like Me in the chat here shortly too for you to learn more. And I will note that the Depression Looks Like Me campaign is specifically for audiences 18+. And while we navigate today's topic of coming out, we know that that happens earlier for a lot of folks. But we want to make note that those resources are for individuals 18+. And we hope that anyone joining us today in any stage of your current journey is able to connect and gain some insight into our topic. So we thank you all for joining us. And now to introduce our lovely speakers we have here today, I'm going to give you a little bit of information about each of them, and then we're just going to dive right into our discussion. First with us, we have Angel Jean, who is a mental health advocate and scholar activist. Situated at the intersection of research and public impact, her work seeks to empower historically marginalized communities, build capacity for culturally responsive research and care, and advance mental health equity through epistemic justice. They have served as a climate action fellow for White Pony Express, a food recovery organization committed to ending food insecurity, a civic action fellow for Little Manila Rising, a Southern Stockton building-based nonprofit committed to bringing mental health, education, and environmental wellness to the region. And Angel is an inaugural Next Gen Youth Advisor for the National Alliance on Mental Illness. With us, we also have Zoe Stoller, who is a queer creator, educator, and social worker with a passion for spreading LGBTQ+ knowledge, mental health visibility, and overall authenticity through the power of social media. Zoe's goals are to break down the stigma surrounding these topics, to create online resources with free and accessible education, and to empower his community to be their fullest, most authentic selves. Welcome, Zoe. We also with us today have Theo Schwartz, who is a queer, transgender, non-binary, disabled Jewish youth who strives to create equity and justice in health, policy, and social work with underrepresented communities. They are especially passionate about transgender rights, disability justice, and transition age youth care. They have worked with transition age youth for 8 years in different capacities, including sexual health, mental health, and social justice. They graduated from the University of Utah with a bachelor's degree in community health education in 2021 and is a certified health education specialist. They enjoy fun button-up shirts, coffee, and listening to music. Welcome, Theo. And last, we have Alex Gira, who is a Latinx content creator who identifies as transgender and shares content about his mental health and day-to-day life. As a first-generation American, Alex has an entrepreneurial spirit and co-founded Mutual Love, which hosts pop-up events focused on trans and queer wellness. Mutual Love recently hosted a 3-day event at South by Southwest, where Alex shared information about the importance of joy, rest, and regulation in the LGBTQ+ community. Welcome, Alex, and welcome to all of our speakers. I am so joyed to have you here joining us today. And we'll just jump right into our discussion. And I know those bios told us a peek about each of you and a lot about, your professional lives and your professional work. But I'd love for our audience just to get to know you each a little more better, in regards to your identity and how that's related with mental health over time and what your journeys looked like with that. So if each of you could just give us a little bit more about yourself and let us know about how exploring your identity throughout your life has impacted your mental health.
Thank you so much, Jackie. I can jump in first. Hi, everyone. As Jackie said, my name is Zoe Stoller. My pronouns are they, she, or he. I'm calling in from Philadelphia today. Thank you so much to everyone who is joining us. And I definitely have seen a lot of positive benefits from discovering my queer identities in terms of their effect on my mental health. I have struggled a lot with my mental health throughout my life, particularly in my early adulthood before I really discovered my LGBTQ identities. I've had some really bad mental health crises, and upon reflection, I can really understand that a lot of that, that the struggles kind of came from not understanding myself and thus not really living as my fullest, most authentic self in the real world. I was trying to kind of shove myself into the boxes of being a straight cisgender woman, which is not at all who I am, but who I thought I was from society. And it never felt right. But because I didn't really understand that I was queer and non-binary, I assumed that there was something wrong with me rather than taking the initiative to really be searching for other opportunities and other options for identity and self. But luckily, after kind of really struggling with my mental health, but starting to go to therapy and starting to really work on myself and my self-love, I was able to discover that my identity is so much broader than what society gave me, and that actually there is a whole community out there who would love and support me for exactly who I am, that I didn't have to pretend to be somebody else, that I could spend time discovering myself. And now it's been, I think, 6 or 7 years since I first came out as queer, and it's been the most fruitful 6 or 7 years of my life. I'm definitely in the happiest place that I've ever been, and it's because I know who I am and I'm living as my authentic self.
Thank you, Zoe. That was incredible. And thank you, Jackie, for introducing us and having us. As Jackie said, my name is Theo Schwartz. I use they, them pronouns. I'm calling in from Salt Lake City, Utah. And overall, just exploring my identity has been such a huge positive impact to my mental health. And it's honestly something that I'm still exploring. I feel like every day I'm learning new things about my sexuality and gender, just from learning from other people and from doing research and seeing other people in media. But it's been such a positive experience, really exploring myself and getting to know myself. I feel like I get to be more fully me through my exploration of myself. It's been a lot of looking in with curiosity. And that's been just really wonderful to really explore the idea of curiosity and really take that lens in a wider approach in life and really being more curious about other things in life because I had the opportunity to be curious about my identity. And I just feel so grateful that I've had the opportunity to explore because it has just made me so much of a fuller me. And I've really gotten to express myself in different ways, whether that's really feeling like I am really comfortable in my identity or I'm not really comfortable in my identity. Just the opportunity to explore has been a great opportunity.
Yeah, thank you both. I actually relate a lot to what you both said. And um, my name is Alex. I use he, him pronouns. I'm calling in from Bozeman, Montana. I'm visiting my brother right now, but I live in Austin, Texas, and I'm originally from Los Angeles, California. So a little bit all over the place. I love to travel, so I'm always around. I like road tripping, so drove here from California. This time I have driven from Texas, which is a really long drive, but it's something I love to do, and I'm a content creator, so I like to just capture my day to day. And Yeah, just really connected with what you both said, and especially Theo, the curiosity portion of things. I feel like I've really allowed myself to be curious more recently, honestly. Um, I'm 31. I've been out as trans and been transitioning for almost 5 years. So around when I was like 26, and before that came out numerous times as numerous different things, and it was a complicated journey, personally, and I never really realized how much it did affect my mental health. I don't think. Now that I look back, I'm like, oh yeah, I was definitely depressed. I was definitely anxious, but definitely didn't have the words or like resources, especially, and the way to like connect that had anything to do with my identity. So through just my own journey and therapy, especially, and just like all kinds of different things, just finding that has been really cool. And yeah, allowing myself to be curious and allowing myself to like open up to different possibilities of what that looks like. Um, I always say that like now this in this part of my transition, I'm so like incredibly grateful to be trans because I don't think that most of the population gets to know themselves on this level. And I think because people aren't open usually to like exploring themselves in that way, we see a lot of like this closed off like fear of that. And I'm blessed to be able to like know myself in such a deep way, even if it was like complicated or there were moments where it was like, damn, this sucks. Um, I get to like live every day with like knowing myself so fully. And I think trans people and queer people in general really get that. And I wish more people really were comfortable, even if you are a cis straight person, like really knowing your identity because there's multiple parts of it. Um, but yeah.
Hi, everyone. My name is Angel. I use she, they pronouns. Again, a lot of resonances with what folks have already shared, especially this idea that discovery is just a never-ending process, and that's kind of the beauty and like curiosity of it. So I just really appreciated the stories that have been shared so far. And when I like think about this question, there's like a lyric from one of my favorite songs by Mitski. She's like a Japanese American, amazing like artist, lyricist, singer, songwriter, from the song "You're Best American Girl," and the lyric is, your mother might not approve of how my mother raised me, but I do. I think I do, and that like really encapsulates my journey because my journey into queerness is really tied into my, challenge and conflict with the journey of assimilation as like a woman of color and a first generation immigrant. I think growing up, my sense of like self in terms of my capacity to be loved, desired, validated, affirmed was really tied up in this idea of like, straight whiteness. And I just felt like I was never going to live up to that standard. And it really impacted the way I felt about myself, my self-esteem, my body image, my mental health in general. And like as I've, grown and become more aware of like language related to like anti-racism, I can see the intersections of the ways that like the patriarchy and this ideal of white straightness has really been set up in this like intersectionality and nexus of all these types of identities and forms of oppression. And so in becoming more equipped with that language and language of empowerment and being able to dissect like why I feel this way, like I've really been able to decenter like whiteness and with the white male gaze from how I view my capacity to be loved. And also my idea of desire, because now I identify as asexual. And that's been like a really, amazing journey for me, just because like so much of being a woman of color is also being objectified. And being able to detach myself from that, I think has just made me feel so much better and feel more empowered and feel empowered in this discovery. And yeah, I just really appreciate the stories that have been shared, a lot of resonances, and that's my journey so far.
Thank you all so much for sharing so openly and beautifully each of your stories. And really the through line to each of them is that the more you are able to come into your authentic self and express that, the better your mental health got. And the happier you were, and the less anxiety and stress weighed on you, which I know for a lot of individuals who are are LGBTQ plus, live in that community, anxiety, depression, and other mental health conditions can be more prevalent because of all of the other pressures they have, whether it's that they feel they can't come out, they wouldn't be safe, that they wouldn't be accepted, that they would be misjudged. And then just the inner turmoil too of being able to work through all of that in this society that, as Angel, you so eloquently stated, is working against individuals who are of these minorities. So thank you all for doing that in a beautiful way and expressing each of your journeys in that sense. I want to kind of dig into, as today is National Coming Out Day, your coming out journeys. And we know that every experience is unique and must be navigated in a way that is really comfortable and safe for that individual. And it looks different for everyone. But I'd love for you to tell us a little bit more about your coming out journey. And one thing I want to recognize too, as we dive into this question, the conversation we had in a previous webinar around the time of Pride Month, one individual had shared that, you know, it's not coming out once. Like, I feel like I have to come out every day, and that is so exhausting. And that's taxing on my mental health. And so I know that this coming out, yes, there's a time when it's the first announcement or the first person you confide in to share that part about yourself, but it's also something that you're always navigating. So I'd just love to hear from each of you a little bit about your experiences there.
I can go first. I think as, yeah, I mean, I think as a passing trans man, I think obviously there's a lot of privilege that comes with that at this point, and it's interesting to have to navigate that as well, as a new kind of concept for me. And I think the whole coming out again and again, certain people I think are in a position to have to do that a lot more than others, and it's not fair and it's like sucks. So I just want to name that, because for myself, obviously, I don't have to typically divulge anything unless I want to at this point in my transition. Obviously, it wasn't always like this, but I do just want to name that, because it's important for people to know that, like, for some people, it unfortunately doesn't work that way. And we see that happen to a lot of folks in the community all the time. But I think, I mean, I feel like I've been coming out since I was like 14 years old. I'm pretty sure that's the first time I identified as something. Even though now when I look back, I'm like, okay, like, let's be real. It's probably been a lot longer than that. And I knew there was something, but I just didn't know what that looked like. For me, a lot of like my first ideas around gender and stuff were around like clothing and expression. And that was where I was like, okay, I don't like feminine or girly clothes. I'm just going to use those words for this, because clothes has no gender, obviously. But when I was younger, and this was in like, I was probably like 5, so this was in the 90s. Just like, I remember like running to my cousin's house and putting on all his clothes, because that felt safe for me. And, you know, I received a lot of interesting feedback with, you know, family and stuff like that around like, we don't like, not that it was like, it wasn't like discouraged too much, but you can tell when there's like, but why don't you want to wear this? And it's like, because I don't want to. And so of course, like that internalized shame started very, very early for me. And so, you know, I think if I had been brought up to like be proud of that, or it didn't matter at all, I think I would have come out a lot earlier and things would have been a little bit easier for me. But yeah, I came out many, many times over a span of like 13 years, and I would come out and I would take it back because I got scared. I did that many times. I'd be like, actually, never mind. Just kidding. But in my heart of hearts, I knew that I wasn't kidding. I was just really afraid of what that looked like. And it was kind of a lot of taking care of everybody else's feelings but mine, which I think a lot of queer people can relate to. And it's just like, I was ready to come out a lot like earlier than I did. But it was like, and many times when I took it back, I was like, this sucks. I don't want to be taking it back, but I just don't feel comfortable. And so I think a lot of it was like oh, well, they're going to be uncomfortable with it, so maybe I should wait, or let them come to terms with it. And it's like, at the end of the day, it was just like, I have to do this for me. And so the last time I came out, for now, who knows, coming out and queerness is ever changing and ever evolving. And I think that's part of the beautiful parts of it. But I think when I finally came out as trans 5 years ago, I was like, there's no going back. I'm not going back on this. This is real. I was also in a position where I wasn't living at home. There were various different things that felt like aligned in that moment. However, family is really, really important to me. And so it was very scary to finally just be like, this is it. And I'm not taking it back this time. Um, Luckily, I have been very, very blessed to have everybody in my life continue to be in my life. I have my parents, I have my brother, I have my extended family, I have my friends. So that is also a huge privilege, and I am thankful and acknowledge that every day. So a lot of people don't get that, but yeah, it is every day. And as a content creator, I just want to touch on that. Like, I come out every day to random people on the internet, and I am blessed to say that I think because I'm not personally, I don't have the like mental capacity to like react to like negative or hateful comments. So I just delete or block. And so thankfully at this point, I don't get that many because I think people want to rise out of people from what I've found. And so I personally just don't engage. I think it is important to acknowledge it, but sometimes when it's just like really negative, it's like they don't want to listen, they don't want to hear, they don't want to learn. And honestly, it's not my place to do that sometimes. But yeah, so I come out every single day because I make a new video every single day. But at this point, I feel really happy to be able to do that and share my story and be able to be around other amazing people like yourselves. And I've met incredible humans because of my coming out. And so like I wouldn't change it for the world. But it's a process and a journey for sure.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Alex. I definitely relate to the, coming out and then taking it back, or being out in certain spaces and then not. And that is definitely like a whole other issue in itself. And, that definitely affected my mental health a lot. I remember for me particularly, it was certain job areas that, I was not out in because it didn't feel safe. But then like with my friends, I was out, and it was so hard to code switch, so hard to go back and forth between being myself and worrying that people were going to find out who I was. That is not fun. But of course, a lot of people have to do that for safety reasons or for other reasons. And that's just the reality for a lot of people. And it was my reality for a while. Now I've been very intentional about working in LGBTQ focused spaces. I actually work at the LGBT center at a college. And so this is a space where I can just show up and not necessarily always be coming out, but just showing up as myself and knowing that I'm working with other queer and trans people. Other people are here just seeing me automatically. But of course, that is a very, very special thing and not really, typical in the larger world, I would say. Going back to my personal coming outs, I will say that there is no one right way to come out, of course. Everyone can do whatever feels best for them. And I would really, really encourage you to lean in on that. A lot of people kind of set up the idea of coming out as being, a whole big conversation where you have to like sit down and talk. And that just felt very intimidating to me. Some people that feels like the right option, but for me, I have a lot of social anxiety, so that was not it. So I, in my various coming outs, honestly have done most of them through group texts, just sending texts to like my family or my friends or whatever, and just letting myself have the time to like write out separately everything I wanted to say, spend time with it, and then share it and not have to worry about the other person's, response or lack thereof, and just be able to, put out myself in the world. And so if that feels right to you, I would recommend that, but also just spend time thinking about what does feel right to you. And remember that you do not have to come out to everybody. You have the option about how to come out, when to come out, to whom to come out. All of that is completely up to you. You have agency in this. And I hope that whatever your experience is, whoever is watching this, that you have people around you who can love and support you.
I will say, again, really related to a lot of what's already been shared, especially Alex, what you said about like sparing other people's feelings at the detriment of your own sense of self and identity. I think the first time I like openly identified as queer was definitely in high school when I made queer friends, but I was really scared about like expressing my identity as asexual because I think a lot of the messaging around romantic love and, you know, again, your ability to be loved and desired and validated it kind of pushes back against asexuality's existence in general. And I felt like there was something like broken about me or wrong about me because I perceived like the gap between my self-perception and society's like standards as like a problem with internally rather than like the system itself. But like as I've again like been more empowered by learning, researching, and being in community, like I felt a lot more comfortable expressing my sexuality and my like gender and identifying openly as queer and asexual. Especially on my college campus, I got really involved in like student government. And I was like student body president my senior year, and I like came out on National Coming Out Day at our event on campus because I wrote a speech, I wrote a poem because I really wanted to show up, and also realize that like again the representation I lacked when I was growing up, like I have now the privilege and stage to literally like make that up for someone else. So that was like probably like one of the proudest moments of my life, being there for other queer folks on my campus, literally representing them and really caring for my constituents in that way. And I will say, like Zoe, like I'm really thankful for you in your position because it was like faculty and staff on my college campus like you who made me feel comfortable to do that. So like again, just community is always like at the center and it's the heart of everything. And I feel like this is definitely like a moment of it. So yeah, like that's how it's going so far. And again, just really appreciate you all.
Yeah, I relate a lot to what everyone's been saying, especially what Angel said about community. I feel like joining or like being in queer communities was how I really discovered myself. My parents are queer, and so I always felt really welcomed in the queer community, but for a long time, I was just like a good ally. And it took me a long time to realize that I was queer. It wasn't until somebody else started using they, them pronouns in my life, and I was like, you can do that? And I was like immediately knew that I wanted to use they, them pronouns. And so I slowly started coming out with friends and teachers in high school, um, just starting to use they, them pronouns. And it took me a long time coming out to my family, honestly, not because they did anything to make me feel unsafe or like they wouldn't be supportive, but family is so important to me and they just have such a huge impact on my life that it was scary. So I was probably most scared to come out to my family, but they've been so supportive and so welcoming. And I didn't really feel like I had to come out about my sexuality. I identify as demisexual, so on that asexual spectrum. Um, I didn't really have like a sit down moment of coming out with my demisexuality. I more had more experiences coming out as non-binary. I felt like that's a bigger part of my identity. Like if we're looking at like gender versus sexuality, gender feels a lot more important in my life. Um, but overall, I didn't really come out with my sexuality. It's just kind of always been expected that I was queer. I don't know if that's just like the vibe I give off, or if it's because my parents are queer and people just assume, not that everyone who is queer parents has queer kids. But I've just had a really positive experience coming out for the most part. I remember I came out like with friends and family first, but I eventually came out in like a social media post on National Coming Out Day, so 4 years ago today. And for the most part, like everyone was really positive. There were a couple people who like didn't post the most positive things, but I've really decided to focus on those that value me and value my identity, which has been challenging. but I feel more joy when I kind of what Alex was saying, don't really pay attention to the negative comments because they aren't there to benefit you. And it's most important to focus on your growth and your identity because you come first. So yeah.
Yeah, totally love what you said about like you come first. I think like as a creator as well, like there's a lot of pressure to show up for the community. And as much as like it's incredible to be able to do that, it's so important to take care of yourself first. Like I think for a long time when I first started like creating content, I had moments where it really did weigh on me and I was like, okay, I have to answer because I don't want some other like trans youth or trans person to see this and like feel like I didn't stand up for them and all this stuff. And it still is complicated for me sometimes where I'm like, but I think at this point I'm just like, I think me showing up and continuing to show up as myself and spreading, you know, joy and positivity without being toxic. Obviously there's real stuff that happens and that stuff needs to be talked about as well. But I think just personally, I was just like, okay, how do I show up for my community? But I have to pour from like my own cup. And so it's like, just like finding that balance is so important. And I realized that I really needed to like do what was best for me and that would shine through to the community in a certain way. And so, yeah, just like really resonate with that and just like taking care of yourself um, first. Even though it feels, I think for a lot of us also, we have this like thing with selfishness. At least I do. I think a lot of queer people can relate to that. But it's not selfish to take care of yourself. Your community will be there for you. If they're the right person for you, like in your life, like they need to know that you need to take care of yourself first, and then we can show up for the rest of our communities.
Thank you all. Any last comments on that one? Thank you so much for sharing. Um, I know that everyone's experience is so different, and like all of you recognized, it happens multiple times, sometimes daily. And I want to recognize too, I saw a few comments in the chat too, that a lot of people might not have these positive experiences coming out or might have some negative reactions. And like Theo said, you know, there are the positive ones, but there's the negative reactions too. And so just recognizing how difficult that can be when you're coming into your identity, feeling that confidence of, wow, I am finally able to fully express who I am, or at least I'm on the journey of figuring it out and I feel confident and comfortable. And then to get that negative reaction or not have the support in the way you thought you would can be really hard. And so we recognize that can cause a lot of extra mental health stress, pressure, anxiety, depression, and it can be hard for people to cope in that way. And I love what all of you said about the importance of community and finding other LGBTQ plus community. I think in those aspects for individuals who might be coming out and aren't receiving the support from who they might have thought would provide that support, that they're able to find it in other ways and really have people that are there for them and that do support them. So I love that each of you have been able to find those communities in your life, whether it be, you know, your friends and families or outside LGBTQ plus community members and allies and your chosen families in those aspects. So thank you all for sharing. I want to, and I know there are a few questions about this in the chat here too, but I want to talk about how you've been able to feel most comfortable in your identity and in these coming out environments. Like you said, you know, sometimes, Alex, it's coming out on social media. Sometimes for Zoe, it might be in a text or it might be in person or it might be this large display. Like Angel had her wonderful experience that you're able to do that in public. But for each of those environments, they're very different. And for individuals that are joining today that are allies, how can we create these safer spaces, these comfortable environments for people who do identify as LGBTQ plus to feel comfortable coming out and sharing that with us. And I know a few people had posted questions about, you know, as parents or as friends or as teachers, how do we provide those spaces that make people feel comfortable? And just from your experience, maybe just a few points of those times when it was most comfortable. What did that feel like, or what was in place that made it feel more comfortable and to feel that support?
I think one big thing that has made a really big difference for me is when people have asked me along my coming out journey, like, how can I make you feel most comfortable? Because there were times where I wasn't out to everyone and I was only out to some people. And I was like, look, you can use they, them pronouns with this group of people, but not this group of people. But since I've been more out publicly, what has really made the difference is people using my correct pronouns and correcting other people. It can get really tiring correcting people 24/7. And I hate conflict, honestly. And I don't, not that correcting people is necessarily conflict, but it feels like it internally. And so it really helps when other people really stand up for me and correct other people. But as well as like correcting themselves and not making it a huge deal when they correct themselves. It's a really difficult balance. And really just having those conversations with the person who is at the center of attention beforehand is really important, because when someone corrects themselves and is like overly apologetic, it makes you feel like you have to say, oh, it's okay, when really it's not really okay. And so it's really important to have that conversation with the person and say, when I need to correct myself, is there a response that you want to hear? Or is there a way that I can correct myself that will be best for you? Um, and also, like, one thing that makes me feel really welcomed is always pride gear, especially from queer owned businesses. I love wearing like rainbow stuff. I'm a total sucker for rainbows. And so I think just like showing yourself visually as well can be a less verbal thing if you don't feel comfortable being verbal, just wearing like a little something rainbow or just wearing a pronoun pin, because everyone uses pronouns. And so that can be a really easy way to just say like, hey, like I use these pronouns, and that doesn't have to mean that you're LGBTQ plus. It could just mean like you want to share pronouns and you want to be a good ally. So I think those are some really great ways.
Yes, I love everything that you shared, Theo. Thank you so much for those suggestions. Definitely agree with all of that. I also kind of thinking about the, coming out in the moment, that kind of process. I know that one thing that really frightens in the present tense me is people's like reactions. A lot of times we can't really like control what our faces do if we're met with something that confuses us or shocks us. And it might be confusing or shocking to you, if your child comes out to you or if someone close to you comes out to you and you're not expecting it. And it is valid if you have your own feelings in those moments. But I would try to encourage you as much as possible to try to not let your own feelings be displayed through your face, through your body language, all of that, and to try to just focus your reaction as much as possible on being supportive and just present for the other person, whoever is coming out to you, because your feelings do matter. But in the end, in that moment, person whose feelings matter most is that person who's being vulnerable right there and sharing themselves with you. Because as we've talked about, it's really scary and it's not always met with love and support. And so the most you can do to just meet that with support and not with confusion, not with judgment, not with, any of the internal things that are happening, that would be really, really helpful. But I agree with Theo that ask the person also specifically, what can I do to make you feel most supported? Because everybody's going to be different.
Absolutely, again, agree. And I think that a lot of times, especially now, like queer folks feel a lot of pressure to come out for other people. Like it's something to affirm other people's allyship or affirm other people's, preconceptions rather than affirm how they feel and their sense of self. So kind of just reframing, again, coming out as like something for you, and not for other people. And then if you're like an ally or someone who is, you know, trying to support the queer folks in your life, like Zoe said, like decenter yourself in that process. I think maybe your first reaction would be to like ask a lot of questions or like, again, show your reaction. But after this person has come to you, already having done the emotional labor of being themselves around you and risking their own psychological, emotional, physical safety to do that, like don't also put additional pressure on them to also educate you and do the emotional labor of, again, like proving the resistance through things that you want to know that you can learn on your own and come to them with having shown that you've done the work to be there. I think that's like super important. And again, like just like read, watch, like educating yourself is probably the most important thing in showing up for other people. And also, you know, having the pride flags and all the like physical displays of safety. You're a safe person. I think that's what has also, like Theo said, like really made me feel comfortable around certain people. But yeah, like decentering yourself and realizing that coming out is for a person's empowerment, not for other people's, you know, own preconceptions of what it should be.
Yeah, 100% agree with like the decentering. I think a lot of times, especially with like parents and it's expected, right? Like it's understandable, like Zoe said, like your feelings do matter in that moment. Um, but again, like that person is coming to you, that child, that youth, that whoever they are is coming to you and like being super vulnerable. And so just taking that moment to like be like, okay, even though I want to like say a bunch of things or feel a certain way, again, there's a time and a place for that. 100%. I do think that I definitely had to have a lot of patience. And I think as queer folks, you know, I often talk to other people about also like we had time to come out to ourselves, and so like also like giving people patience under certain circumstances. We don't have to deal with abuse, like anything like that. Never. But I'm saying when there is love and when there's that exchange, there can be a lot of patience that comes from us. But if that is in that moment, I think there's also a beauty in being like, I support you and I see you. I'm having a lot of feelings come up for myself. Can we take a second? And then we can come back to this because of course, yeah, like there is going to be that, like, there might be a face, like Zoe said, that you make or something like that. And so like being able to like say like, I see you and I do want to have this conversation with you, but I don't want to have these like this moment of whatever it is. And so I don't want to put that on you. So let's like regroup in like however it is. And just making sure that that person's still comfortable and like, you know, again, I love you. I'm just having a lot of feelings and I don't want that to be put onto you. I think that's really important because we all have our feelings about things. And I think, Theo, on what you mentioned about like showing up and like correcting others for people and like being there, also doing that behind closed doors. I think it's really easy that people like to do that when we're around, where it's like, hey, this is my friend. Like, don't say that. But I think we all like become uncomfortable sometimes when we're around other people and they're like being kind of rude or transphobic or queerphobic or whatever that may look like. And we're like, oh my God, how do I like say like stop that? Because it can be kind of scary too. I get that. But especially allies, especially straight cis allies that have the privilege to be able to do that without outing themselves or having to, you know, do anything like that. I think that's a big, huge thing to show up when we're not in the room. If you have friends that are being gross or saying stupid stuff, tell them that that's not cool. You know, like that's an easy thing that y'all can do to really support us and like and teach other people. A lot of ignorance is bred by no one saying anything. People are allowed to continue to say things and they just don't even know what they're doing. So showing up like that is really important. But yeah, I think what y'all said is perfect too.
Thank you all. Those were really helpful examples and examples of conversations and how you can hold space for those conversations. Examples like Theo said of, you know, displaying that you're an ally, whether that be through displaying your pronouns or other ways. I know I love when I walk into a cafe and there's a little pride flag on the door or something, just knowing this is a space that's safe for our LGBTQ plus folks. And I also just want to make a note too. I love what you said, Alex, about, you know, standing up and redirecting conversation when there is hate or discrimination. That's so important. And outwardly, if you are someone who doesn't live within the LGBTQ plus community, but you're an ally, those are some of the most important actions you can take so that it isn't the folks that living in that community that have to stand up for themselves every day, because that's exhausting too. And also just really harmful to mental health. So if you're able to stand up in those instances and really just educate others, there's so much misinformation out there about the LGBTQ plus community and about individuals that belong to that really that education, those honest conversations, and denouncing that type of ignorance and harmful speech in different places is really important. Another thing too is just on an individual level, I think about being there for the people in your life in really intentional ways so that they already know that you're a safe person to come to with this. How can you just show up? And that's such an important part of mental health, is just being there in intentional and honest ways for the people in your life. Saying how are you and meaning it and wanting to have those conversations. And when you build those type of relationships, individuals that might be struggling with things like their identity or their sexuality, they'll feel a lot more comfortable coming to you and talking to you about those experiences if they already know that you're someone that they have come to in the past about their mental health struggles, or just that they can be really honest with about who they are. So thank you all so much for those. I know we're getting close to the end of our hour and we have so much we could talk about today. I want to hear from each of you a little bit about who have been or what has been the greatest support in your mental health journey and also just your coming out journey.
That is a great question. I feel like I could list so many people. I have been very fortunate to develop a really, really close-knit community of friends, of mentors, support systems, which is not something that I've been able to say throughout my whole life. So I'm really, really thankful that I have developed that in my adulthood now. If I had to choose just one person, I will say my therapist, who I've been seeing for 8 years now. I started seeing her at the kind of beginnings of my mental health crisis when I was in college, before I'd realized I was queer, before I'd realized I was non-binary, all of this. And she really, really helped me not only kind of get through my mental health struggles, but also kind of start this process of self-discovery. And then she was fully there for me when I came out as queer, fully there when I came out as non-binary. She continues to be fully there for me, no matter what I say, no matter who I am. She has seen me through so many things, so many ups and downs, so many iterations of myself. And I'm just so thankful to have someone so supportive and loving, and so grounding in my life.
That's awesome. Would definitely, yeah, I would add my therapist multiple throughout the years to my list of supporters. It really was incredible. I remember right in the beginning of my transition, I had like a trans therapist, and that was like life-changing for me. So like that was special. But I'm happy to say like my family, and be able to say that is really important. And again, that wasn't without having patience and some time, but now it's extremely beneficial to have them in my corner, for both my mental health and my coming out journey, as well as like the community. I think if I were to be honest, like most of the time when I'm having like conversations really deeply about like feelings and identity and all that's mixed together a lot of times, but it's like with people that I've met that are part of my like queer and trans community. Because I think so often we've felt alone so many times that like when we really find the people that can be there for us, it's like we have this different kind of understanding, I think, and it's a special, as much as it might have been through a lot of pain, it's a special place to be able to be so open about that. That no matter how, I think like for me personally, no matter how like much of an ally like someone is in my life, like there's something very special about talking about it with another like trans or queer person personally. Not that I don't have incredible allies in my life, but it's just, yeah, there's like a different aspect of it for me. And so that's really important. And I didn't grow up with a lot of queer community in general. Most of my friends from childhood who I love dearly and still see to this day are straight and cis and not part of the community at all. So that honestly only started to develop in the last like 5 years. And now that's kind of why I started Mutual Love. And we throw these festivals around rest and inner child healing for the community. And it's been really, really important to create that for other people because I wanted that outside of bars and clubs, outside of drinking and moments like that. So yeah, I'd say like the queer community for me is my biggest support right now.
Definitely the same. Oh, sorry, Theo. Did you? Okay.
Go ahead.
Definitely the same as Alex. I in high school built this friend group, and they were all openly queer. A lot of them were openly aromantic, asexual, and that just made me feel like not only so safe, but feel like someone's already done it. Like, someone's there to take you under their wing. And I think it's really hard to be like the first to do anything. So when you have someone there beside you who can affirm you and tell you like this is what they've experienced, that is just so affirming and welcoming, and it makes you feel like your existence is indisputable. There are people who exist alongside you, and you will never be alone in this. Yeah, I would also say that like digital content creators, Alex, like my TikTok for you page is full of people who just make me feel so safe and like also make me feel like myself and have given me the language to articulate my experiences. So I think just the power of social media in general, like this is proof of it. And like my journey like can speak to the bravery of like digital content creators who really use their lived experience to amplify the concerns and issues and also like great joys of being queer. So yeah, like thank you, Alex, and thank you to my friends.
I agree with what everyone's been saying so far. Finding a queer-friendly therapist was huge for me. And finding queer community was huge. I go to transgender non-binary support group every week that a therapy office here puts on. And as well as like content creators have been really important to me. Media has been really important to me. Steven Universe, having a non-binary character was huge for me. That really like made a difference. I think as well as like friends, parents have been really helpful. Something that has really helped with my mental health has been medication management as well. And I know that looks different for everyone, but it's been really helpful for me. And I think along with my therapist, a huge support to myself has been myself. My therapist has helped me find like accepting myself, flaws and all, and really loving myself. So I feel like I've been one of my biggest supports, but I just agree with what everyone's been saying.
You all just make me want to breathe in this environment and bottle it up, and everything you're saying is so, so wonderful. Thank you all for sharing. I want to elevate Alex and Angel and Theo, what you said about the digital environments and how they can provide that connection. And this is something we've kind of been exploring through different MHA webinar conversations in the last few months as we've talked about technology's impact on mental health. And a lot of times we're looking at the negative impacts, but there's so many positive impacts. And one of them being finding community, especially for folks who live in an area where there might not be representation of them in that physical environment of where do I go then to find that support and community and to talk to others that are like me or have experienced things that I'm going through. And really those online groups are so important. And even finding a content creator you really look up to or that you can really connect to. And so thank you so much for bringing that up. I think it's a key part of this conversation as we talk about finding that community and finding that safety. If people aren't in a physical location where they're able to connect in person, there's other ways that they can build that connection. So thank you all for your wonderful insights. I know we have just about 5 minutes left, and that's not much time here, but I would love for each of you, as we close out this session today, just to maybe give one brief piece of advice for anyone who might be listening that might just be struggling either with their mental health, with their identity, that they've been wanting to come out, feel they can't, or just in that phase of a time that might be challenging for them. And I know each of you have talked about how you've been there in your lives before. Just what's one thing that you would have told yourself or that you would like to hear for those folks today?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think for me, what comes up is just like, it took me a while to really learn about this, but like at the end of the day, it's your life, and it really is about you. So take that and just run with it, because you don't get the time back. And I know that if you're in a place where and that's for everything, mental health coming out, take, it's your life, and you can do it with support, of course. But like, just I wish I had told myself, like, or learned that earlier, that like at the end of the day, I can't live my life for other people, no matter who they are, even if they love me. I can't postpone my transition. I can't do anything for others. And so just, yeah, just to be able to sit with that and just know that this life is for you. That's it.
I think two quick pieces. I know you asked for one, but I'm giving two. That there is a community out there for you. As we've talked about a lot during this webinar, like community is huge, whether that's virtual, in person, there is a community for you. And finding that has been huge for me, and I hope that it's huge for other people as well. And just reaching out to people, helping find a community, Googling resources. And the other piece of advice is take your time. You don't have to come out all at once. You get to take your time. And as Alex was saying, like, it's your life. You get to come out to who you want to, when you want to, how you want to. There's no rush. And as long as you're feeling safe and comfortable and you're feeling like you're being true to yourself, then you can take your time.
Yes, I love both those. Along similar lines, my advice is it's never too late to be yourself. Whether you're 15 or 50, you can come out, you can discover yourself, you can question yourself, you can go to therapy, you can work on your mental health, you can think about all these things. There is no right timeline, there is no deadline, it's never too late, and you can start today. And as Theo said, there's a whole community here who has done this and who is ready to support you in that process.
My piece of advice comes from a summit I attended recently on advancing the health of trans and queer youth. And the speaker talked about how like a lot of the way people frame trans and queer issues is like from a deficit model of like, oh, you're going to lose this person, you're going to lose out on this. And the reframing comes into like, every person who doesn't accept you, their loss is you. Like, you're privileged to have in other people's life. And just remember that like every person who has you in their life, like that's a privilege for them, and never feel like it's that deficit model of like, who am I going to lose? No, that person is losing you.
Thank you each so much. Again, just a huge thank you for all of the experiences, the knowledge, the insights you've shared with us this last hour, for your openness, your honesty, your vulnerability in this space. It's been so special for me to get to sit and listen and learn from all of you, and I'm sure for our audience as well. I'm really excited that this was recorded and we can continue to share this out and continue these conversations, because it is so important to continue, like we said, educating and being open and honest, and providing your story so that others who might be sitting here thinking, I haven't heard of someone speak in the way that I feel like I identify, and I really connected with you today. and knowing that their community is out there and support is available. And that's what's so important. So thank you each of our panelists who have joined us here today. Thank you all to our audience who's been here for your wonderful comments throughout today's session. We appreciate you being here for joining us for the last hour. We will send out the recording within 1 week, and we'll also send out that link to request a certificate of attendance. But thank you again, panelists. Have a wonderful rest of your afternoon. Everyone, enjoy your day and happy National Coming Out Day.
Thanks, y'all. See you later.
Thank you, everyone.